This is Michael Lukes with the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, joined by Tom Walter, CEO of Tasty Catering. Tom has been a business owner for over 40 years, started 29 companies, and co-authored the book, It's My Company Too. Tom, thanks a lot for joining me.
My pleasure, Mike. Good to speak with you.
You as well. Tell us a little bit about Tasty Catering.
Tasty Catering is a full-service catering company located in the Chicago metro area. It split off from our restaurant group in 1989 as a standalone business. Tasty Catering produces over 10,000 events annually, and I'm joined as a co-founder with my brothers Larry and Kevin. We now have 2 generations in the family involved in the business, and we're starting to segue the operations of the business over to the second generation. Tasty has won many awards, local, regional, national awards, in areas such as Best Caterer in the Country, Best Small Workplace, and this year we won the American Psychological Association's Psychologically Healthiest Workplace, which we're kind of happy about. That means our people are pretty happy at their work. So that's the background of Tasty Catering.
Great. Have you always been entrepreneurial?
I don't know really how to answer that, Mike. I think I've always wanted to be my own boss, and I've always never liked working for other people. Maybe as I was fortunate enough never to have a good boss. Actually, I had bosses. That's all I had were bosses and managers when I was young, and I thought there's got to be a better way to lead life. So I started my first business in '71 because I couldn't stand working for other people. And it's not that I'm innovative or have innovative products as much as I did not like working for others. I thought there was a better way to operate a business.
You've started a mass amount of companies within Tasty Catering, and several of those from your own staff. How has supporting young entrepreneurs benefited the company?
You're right. Something that's really quirky is how once we released command and control leadership and we switched to more of a culture-based driven leadership, our young employees have launched 5 companies in the last 6 years, and they would design the concept, and they approached my brothers and I for funding in exchange for an equity position. And 3 of those in particular have been the leaders of this movement, Jamie, Tim, and Aaron. But supporting young entrepreneurs has benefited our company, Tasty Catering, because they continue to be involved with the leadership. And they provide advice and strategic planning for all of our 9 operating companies. And rather than lose them to go out and find their own business and leave us completely, we wanted to keep them involved because their brains were so precious and their approaches to life were so unique. So rather than have them leave us, we thought that we'd help start their own business. And typically entrepreneurs with an organization will hit a glass ceiling and they'll become disenfranchised and want to start their own business. And I've always urged my friends, help your employees start a business. They also serve as an example to our young entrepreneurs that within our current workforce, that if you come to work at Tasty and you have a great idea, Tasty will support your idea. One of our split-off companies is New Fork, a creative agency, and one of their employees is starting his own business, and New Fork is funding him and helping him start his own creative business. So it's kind of cool. It's like having a grandchild, it's splitting off again. But it's led to us attracting the best young employees in the area, the best young high school and college people, because they want to come here and learn what it is to be an entrepreneur and learn what it is to be a worker. So that's how we benefited.
Great. And even outside of supporting entrepreneurs within your own organization, you do serve as a mentor to a lot of young entrepreneurs. Why are you so passionate about young entrepreneurs, even outside of your own company?
Well, at first, I'm just going to finish with that statement about our young entrepreneurs. I consider them my 401k plan. I'd rather take the money out of my 401ks and invest it into them. So my 401k has a face, it has a name, it has a soul, it has a disposition, and I trust it. I don't know what the stock market's going to do with my money, but I certainly know that these young people that I invest in are going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I'm taken care of. But my passion for young entrepreneurs is perhaps twofold. When I started in the early 70s, entrepreneur was just a French word. There was no support system. Starting your own business was frowned upon. You should go work for a major corporation like Illinois Bell Telephone or Northern Illinois Gas, because then you'd be guaranteed a pension, a defined benefit pension, and be set for life. So there was no place to seek advice. I thought that if I made it, I'm going to break that cycle. I'm going to help others, because I made mistake after mistake after mistake, and it just was unbelievable the amount of mistakes I made. And luckily for me, I had a wife who ended up finishing graduate school with a degree in finance and became a certified financial planner. And she was able to help me from the financial aspect, but not from the entrepreneur aspect. She did not understand. She called it an illness that I had. I was a serial entrepreneur. So I decided that when I got to the point where my businesses were doing okay, I would spend time mentoring young entrepreneurs, just like grandparents mentor their grandchildren. So I mentor entrepreneurs at every age, as well as speak to entrepreneur classes. I have probably about between 30 and 40 people I'm actively mentoring. Some of them are just emails once or twice a month. How you doing? What's your biggest problem? What's your biggest happiness? But the second reason, Mike, is that the world economic model is switching to smaller businesses. Even in Chicago, 70% of all businesses in Chicago have less than 20 employees. That means that you don't have room in your staff to have people understand organizational behavior, org development, emotional intelligence. There's a lot of areas that are missing, disciplines that are missing. You just focus on the market and the product, and you're lost. So for our world economy to succeed, we need to focus on innovation, startups, and the transition of existing businesses, older, mature businesses, to younger people. Otherwise, we're going to have a huge gap, and we're going to have a lot of business failures, which decimates society because people lose their jobs, they go out of business, they declare bankruptcy, people have guilt, animosity. So I think it's important that the older entrepreneurs that have become successful transition and help younger entrepreneurs.
Once again, this is Michael Lukes here with Tom Walter. On behalf of the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, I want to thank you again for agreeing to speak at the 2013 CEO National Conference. What will you be speaking about?
I'm going to focus on what it takes to build a sustainable organization, a formula that results in a successful, sustainable entrepreneurial organization. It's going to discuss. The session will discuss the important options to consider when developing a business model. It'll touch on the importance of buy-sell agreements, valuation formulas, what we call in the civilian world prenuptials. What happens if the marriage breaks up? What steps can be taken in advance to make that an easy solution for a dissolvement of the structure? We're also going to introduce a simple formula that has been discovered that allows an organization to become sustainably successful. That means that it goes beyond the startup, it goes beyond the launch, it goes beyond the evolution, and it goes through those trying times where you're too big to be small, but you're too small to be big. And in the time where the founder becomes, instead of just an entrepreneurial founder, he becomes or she becomes a CEO. So the session contains information that's usually not covered in the classroom, but it's learned over time in business situations.
Following up on startup prenuptials, I find that very interesting. Do you feel like the divorce rate among startup founders is higher than marriage divorce?
Far higher than marriage divorce. Far higher, and it's unbelievably frightening. My own son, who had started businesses, was beginning his business with two of his high school friends, and this turned out to be one of the most phenomenally successful businesses I've ever witnessed. And I told him that I would not. He came to me for money. He wanted money, investment, a pure investment, not an equity position, because he wanted to do it on his own. And I said, not until I see a prenup, not until I see a valuation formula and a way to dissolve the company if the partners don't get along. And, well, Dad, we've known each other since we were like in junior high school. I said, doesn't make any difference. Within 2 years, they bought out the third partner, because of problems that existed within his attitude. You know, you reach a certain level of success, Mike, And some people are driven for more, and some people are driven, well, I've got my Mercedes, I've got my beautiful townhouse, I've got a boat. Why do I want to work anymore? And the other ones are saying, well, look, I want a bigger Mercedes, I want a bigger house, I want a bigger boat. And so, yes, the divorce rate is incredible. And furthermore, what complicates it even more is you start a business on a college campus with your best friend. It might be a fellow teammate on a sports team. It might be a fraternity brother or sorority sister. It might be a roommate. But eventually they find a significant other and they move away and get married or decide to do another job. And then how do you decide where the value is in the business? And I've met people that have been in this situation. One of them was $15 million had to pay a partner because the partner wanted to sell, but he didn't want to sell, so he bought his partner out for $15 million, and it took him 5 years to pay that off. And if he would have had a prenup, and if he would have a clear valuation formula, it would have been very simple. However, they decided to sell and to the highest bidder, and the highest bidder put a price at $15 million. It was twice what the valuation of the company was for, but because the valuation was $15 million, they had to sell at $15 million. So yes, it is far higher, and it destroys a lot of companies because of that internal strife. Where if it's clearly determined how you buy and how you sell and how the valuation principles are followed, it's a matter of 2 hours, and the sale can be, the final numbers can be determined. And then it just takes the time for the attorneys to draft up the agreement, and it's over with.
What have been a few of the keys to success that you've seen for startup companies that you've supported and worked with in the past?
If we were to place all their products and markets at the same baseline, the highest achievers shared probably 3 traits. Let's just focus on 3 traits. They all had advisors in the key business disciplines, which means they had a financial advisor, an accounting advisor, an attorney, banker, publicity, communications, marketing. So in all the business disciplines, they had a key person that had been to a higher level than they were at. So if they were at $500,000 or startup, these people had clients in the range of $10 million or $5 million. So they could teach them how to grow to that level. The second one is the successful ones have had an advanced emotional intelligence. Whether you use Daniel Goleman's model of emotional intelligence or Savoy and Myers, I like Savoy and Myers. It's perceiving, realizing, understanding, and managing through emotions. It gets you beyond the anger and the stress of a startup, and it allows you to become a better leader. So all successful entrepreneurs seem to have a higher level of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence doesn't start till you're 18 years old, and it escalates as you get older. That's why everybody has a wise grandmother or a wise grandfather. Well, they're not really smarter than you. They're just wiser than you. They've been around a long time. So, and the third one would be a high level of 3 capitals, the 3 critical capitals to an entrepreneur. That's human capital, understanding that you need to have the best possible people, screen for skill but hire for attitude. Financial capital, having 2 or 3 times more than you believe you need to start a business. And psychological capital. Great leaders have tremendous levels of psychological capital. That's hope, optimism, self-efficacy, the ability to set goals and realize goals and achieve goals, and the most critical of all, psychological resiliency, that when it really gets tough and hard and difficult, you have the resiliency to fight through those long hours, those terrible disappointments, the loss of contracts, the loss of key clients. That's psychological resiliency. So those 3, advisors, advanced emotional intelligence, and focusing on the 3 key capitals of human, financial, and psychological capital, were earmarks of those who had a better success ratio than others.
Right. Yeah, even graduating with a degree in entrepreneurship and being within the space for several years, the first time I had even heard emotional intelligence tied to entrepreneurship was earlier this year, and I've just been fascinated with it since. Kind of following up on that just a little bit, with your book, It's My Company Too, that really gave me a different perspective from the aspect of a young entrepreneur. That's just not something commonly we would think about. How can what's used in your book be helpful for young entrepreneurs?
I think specifically in our book, it addresses the softer skills of leadership, and such as being ethical, understanding that if you're use Kant's 4 cohorts of ethics, and if you follow those ethics, your emotional intelligence will increase because you understand what emotions are with people and what the responsibility is to lead people. Kant starts off by saying the first ethical duty of a leader is to always tell the truth. The second one is to respect the privacy of others. What they do on their own time is their own business. The third one is the right never to harm physically, emotionally, psychologically, financially harm your employees. And the fourth one is the right to an implied or written contract. So understanding ethical leadership, and there's a chapter in there about integrated project management. It's the most ethical leader I've ever met in my life. And he naturally then teaches emotional intelligence to the reader, because just by reading how he approaches life, you grow as a leader to determine, wow, I'm no longer a 23-year-old leader, now I'm a 43-year-old leader, because I realized what he found out was important. Jack Stack with his SRC Holdings, where he bought a company with an 89-to-1 debt-to-equity ratio, and he did just the extraordinary things like putting fans in hot factory rooms and bringing in refrigerators. So these are the things, the soft skills that lead to great leadership, and these are all based on emotional intelligence.
What's your best piece of advice for aspiring and current young entrepreneurs?
Ask for advice and ask for help. All we have is each other, and I'll never be able to answer your problem unless you ask me for help. It's very interesting when I go to business conferences that are entrepreneurial driven. My favorite 2 questions to ask fellow entrepreneurs, even ones I've never met before, is what was your biggest high this year and what was your biggest low? And it's amazing when you share these stories. Well, here's my biggest low, and they tell you the story about what happened to them. And then they tell you what their biggest high was, their biggest gain. And I learn from both, and they learn from mine. And so then we share ideas, and I'll take their business card and say, do you mind if I contact you if I run into this problem? When I come back and have a whole file system filled with names, issues, problems with employees, and I'll have 6 names there and emails of people that have had problems like this. So the best advice for aspiring entrepreneurs is to ask for advice, seek help, surround yourself with advisors, peers, mentors, and don't feel like you have to do it alone. I did that on my own 40-plus years ago, and it was hell. Today, there's access all around you for support.
Great. I'm going to finish up here with just one fun question. I know you've worked with some of the world's most amazing entrepreneurs. If you could add one entrepreneur in the world to your team at Tasty Catering, who would it be and why?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I am fortunate to know some of the world's best entrepreneurs, and not really the ones that are immensely successful, the ones you read about in all the glamour business magazines, but people that have made a difference in human beings' lives. So I'm going to eliminate the culture ones and the people that focus on human capital because I share the same passion. The one that I would choose would be Jack Stack from SRC Holdings in Springfield, Missouri, co-author with Bo Burlingham of the book The Great Game of Business. He is a leader that is the most common leader I've ever met in my life. He's a common guy. He's just a guy that just does extraordinary things for human beings. And he has surrounded himself with brilliant people, and he's humble, self-effacing, and he provides common wisdom and leadership. And he's one of the most incredible visionaries I've ever met in my life. And he's just a guy. He's just a good guy. Approachable, understanding. And every time I talk to him, I leave the conversation wiser. Now, there's a lot of other ones I could talk about, but the interesting differentiation between Jack Stack and myself is that we are pretty similar in age, pretty similar in ethnicity. We are of the same religion, and we come from the same style family, large families. But what's really unbelievable is sometimes his thought process is a little bit off kilter from where mine is, and I think, wow, why didn't I think of that? So if I was I encourage people to read Jack Stack's book, The Great Game of Business, because it teaches financial transparency. And his other book is called A Stake in the Outcome. And some of his great sayings, like, those who create wealth should share in the wealth. But, yeah, well, really, how difficult is that to believe? Well, if everybody that's creating wealth shares in it, everybody's going to create wealth. So it just goes, he's a great, great leader. And I believe you've met him, haven't you, Mike?
Yeah, I was able to meet him at the Small Giants conference in San Francisco 2 years ago.
And you'd never believe how wealthy that man is, how many businesses he has. He's opening up 2 businesses a year because he just sits there and talks to you, right?
Yep.
He'll say hello.
Yep, just a normal guy.
Just a regular guy. So never once has ego gone to that man's head. And, his biggest, there's 2 types of leaders. There's the privileged leader and the responsible leader. Jack is the ultimate responsible leader. He's responsible for the people that work for him. So he would be my selection, I would think.
Great. Well, once again, this has been Michael Lukes with Tom Walter, CEO of Tasty Catering, and co-author of It's My Company, Too. Tom, thanks again. We look forward to seeing you at the CEO National Conference in Chicago.
Can't wait. Can't wait to see everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Take care.